Hello and welcome back to Quick and Healthy with Mr. G. It's a cold and snowy day here in Ohio, so today I decided to make us a big pot of soup. I'm going to make us vegetable soup. Now, the vegetable soup that I make starts out with a stock that is basically a tomato-based stock and a vegetable-based stock. I use low sodium V8, I use diced tomatoes, and I use basically any type of vegetable cooking stock. You can also use beef stock or chicken stock or broths. Just be careful that whatever you use is low in sodium. Since this is a vegetarian dish that I'm preparing today, I used vegetable cooking stock, and this is a low sodium stock. Now, I've also got some fresh ground pepper. Let's go through all the ingredients here from your left to your right, my right to my left. I've got corn, baby lima beans, edamame beans, which are basically just soybeans. I've got right here baby sweet peas, I've got carrots, I've got snow peas, and if you remember when I made our pizza last week, I've got the stems, not the very end stem, but the middle part left over from the asparagus. I've got a couple of onions, I've got some red cabbage, I've got some zucchini, some yellow squash, some cauliflower, some broccoli, and some varied herbs here. These herbs were actually grown in my herb garden. And I've got some rice. Now, to get started, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to pour some of our juices, or our stock, or our base for our soup. We're going to pour some of that here into our pot. I'm going to start out with some of this low sodium V8, and I'm going to pour in about, maybe about half of that container. There we go. Now, the next thing I'm going to use is I'm going to use my vegetable stock. I'm going to, let me try to open that here. Wow, I should have opened that beforehand. I'll tell you what, I wasn't thinking, was I? There we go. That wasn't too tough. Let's open that up, and I'm going to pour that in here as well. Now I'm going to use this entire box, which is 32 ounces of vegetable stock here. Let me pour that inside of there. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to prepare our vegetables. Alright, let's start with the easier vegetables first. Here I've got my snap peas. All I'm going to do with these is I'm going to cut the very tips of those off, like so. Now, you may not need to cut the tips off of all of them, but just get off the pieces that are dried and aren't very, don't look very tasty. And once you do that, stack them up and chop them in half. Drop them into your pot of soup. Let's go now on to carrots. Now I'm only preparing a few of these. The carrots may be fine if they're the baby carrots that are pre-washed and pre-peeled. I split those in half and then I cut them into chunks. Now if they're real small, you may need to cut the ends off some of these if they look dried. Cut the ends off. There we go. Split them in half and then in half lengthwise this way. Or actually side to side. In half lengthwise and then in half again. Go ahead and put those into your soup. There we go. Next, the onion. Let's take the onions and let's cut the end off and let's cut the other end off. Once we've done that, take that peel away. Now, we're going to take the onion and we're going to make a slice in it that way, and we're going to peel the outer skin only off, if we can. I've got a wastebasket here to the right of me, so if you keep seeing my hands move over there, that's what I'm doing. I'm putting the waste material into the wastebasket. Okay, let's see how this is going here. Not so good. Not so good. It's being difficult, of course. So, there we go. Finally. There we go. Let's peel that like that. And now let's go ahead and get rid of this waste material. Like that. Now, with your onion, I want to take that and slice it into rings. Maybe about a 1/4 inch thick. Let's stack that baby back up like this. And let's now slice it down the middle and again. Now let's try to slice those little triangles so that those are also maybe just one more slice. This is volume cutting here, people. There we go. That's good. Let's go ahead and put that down into our pot of soup. Good. I'll do the other onion later. I also opened my cans. Here I've got my can of wax beans, and I'm going to go ahead and dump that into the pot. I've got my diced tomatoes. I'm going to dump those into the pot. Good. Let's see, what else have we got here? Okay, the barley's going to come later. Ah, yes, the red cabbage. How are you going to slice that red cabbage? The way that I slice red cabbage is I cut off the end, make sure that hard piece is gone. Now, at that point, I like to take my cabbage and go right down the middle, just like that. That's a tough piece of cabbage. Now, the hard core in the cabbage, I'll go ahead and pop that out of there, like that. I'll do the same to this one. Got to watch my angles here. There we go. Good. Now what I like to do is I like to take from the bottom edge and just start to slice like this. Now, if you think those are too big, you may want to take those and chop them down the middle. You can also start by doing that with your cabbage half here, and then go ahead and slice off about 1/4 inch layers of cabbage. The potatoes, again, I normally would peel my own potatoes, but for sake of speed, I'm going to go ahead and use these ones out of a can, and we're just going to dice those into good-sized chunks. Let's go ahead now with our yellow squash. We cut the ends off of that squash. I've washed all these vegetables already. These are all pre-washed now. And then I'm going to go ahead with my squash. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut it in half. And then I'm going to cut it lengthwise like this. There. We've got 2 halves. And 2 more halves. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut those again. So I'm quartering my squash. Go ahead and cut that down the middle so it's quartered. This one I'm going to cut. There we go. Well, there went a piece on the floor, so that one gets thrown away. Let's quarter that one. And now we'll start cutting these into about, I don't know, 1/4 to 1/2 inch slices. Do the same with this one. You can cut several at a time if you want. Now let's go ahead with the zucchini. We're going to cut the end off the zucchini, and we're going to cut the other end off. We're going to go ahead and cut the zucchini straight down the middle. This is not as long as the squash, so I don't need to worry about cutting it in half. Let's go ahead and do it this way and this way. And now we're going to go ahead and chunk the zucchini as well. What we're looking for here are nice chunky pieces of vegetables, just like that. There we go. And let's go ahead and put those into the soup. Next we've got broccoli. I've pre-washed the broccoli. Let's cut a large portion of the stem off. We'll toss that. Now, we're going to start by cutting the broccoli, the end of it that you just cutting it in really thin slices. Those are probably about maybe 1/8 inch, maybe a little less. Then it's going to actually just release little spears of broccoli, just like that. We're going to cut that, and look at that. It just kind of falls into its own little spears. Now, we'll take the smaller ones out of there, and we're going to put those right in the soup. And if you've got any large ones, what you want to do is you want to split those from the stem side down and maybe quarter them like that. We're going to throw that in the soup. Now, if those stems are maybe a little too long still, go ahead and cut those up into chunks. And then, of course, we're going to break that up a little bit. And we'll cut these stems off a little bit here and put those, all the stem pieces still go into the soup. Those will cook down and make an excellent flavor for our soup. Here we've got, one of the last things, is we have the cauliflower. Now with the cauliflower, what I'm going to do is, we're going to go ahead and take the cauliflower, and I'm going to cut, I'm pulling off the outside pieces, and I'm going to cut at an angle down into the center here of the cauliflower. And what that'll do is that should release this this core, the stem itself. There we go. And we got a piece of cauliflower. Then I'll break that off and set it here. Now, throw that core away, and now we've got chunks of cauliflower, as you see here. What we're going to do next is the same as with the broccoli. We're going to take and thinly slice those. Now, when you get to this point, you may have to break some of those off, like this, and then you can just start to break that up into nice chunky pieces. That's all of our vegetables, except I'm going to put some more carrots and some more pea pods, except for our stems here of asparagus. Now, those were washed last week, and those are ready to go, but they're a little bit too long still. So what I'm going to do with the asparagus is we're going to take it, and I'm going to line it up, and I'm going to cut it in half, and in half again. In this side as well, in half and in half again. So now I've got a bunch of little pieces of asparagus. There we go, we're getting there, getting there. This is going to be delicious. This is going to just be fantastic. And if you have big pieces, don't worry about it. We're going to go ahead and dump our asparagus into the soup as well. Or at least most of it. A lot of it's falling out here onto the floor and other places. This is the start of our soup. Okay, I cut up the rest of the vegetables and I added them to the first pot. The pot was too small. So I've transferred the soup into this much larger stock pot here. Now, start with a large pot. You're probably wondering, how much of each ingredient did I use? It's not important. If you like broccoli and cauliflower better than you like squash and zucchini, use more of them. You'll get a feel for approximately how much to use. Now, if you take a look here in this pot, it looks like basically just a ton of vegetables. And there's very little juice. Now, it's starting to boil here. And what I'm going to do is, we're going to add the rest of our low sodium V8 juice. We're going to add all the rest of that in. And then, we're going to take and we're going to fill this with water to rinse it out. And I'll be adding water to this until it's probably pretty full. We still have to add our frozen vegetables and our rice and our barley. So I'll be right back. I've added enough water to get the pot to about this level with vegetables and liquids. Now, again, the amount of vegetables that you use isn't really all that important. But if I had to guess, I would say I probably used about 1 to 2 cups of each vegetable that you saw here on the table next to me. At this point in time, I've used the V8 bottle, and I've still got water in there so we can add more water. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and start adding some of the frozen vegetables to our soup. Maybe. The frozen vegetables that I'm using are 16-ounce bags, and I'm going to use about a half of each one of these bags. You take my trusty knife here and open this up. We're going to start out here with some lima beans. Again, about half of the bag. That's about it. Set that aside. Let's go on to the peas. About half a bag of peas. Okay, that's good. Set that aside. Now we're going to go with some sweet corn, whole kernel corn. Let's open that bag. Let's put our corn in there. Again, about half the bag. Set that aside. Now, I've got these edamame beans, which are basically soybeans, and I already poured those into there because that bag opened kind of in a bad way. So now, I've got the frozen vegetables into our soup here. This soup is really, really starting to look good. I'll actually reposition the camera and stir this soup as it's cooking so you can see how that looks. Now, what about our fresh herbs? Okay, our fresh herbs, we're not going to put in until the end. But what you want to do is, I've got some fresh sage here, and I'm just going to break that up when I do put that in, into little pieces. Now, I've got some rosemary, and the rosemary is kind of like a pine needle. I'm just going to break the needles off and place those in there whole. Even if they break in half, that's fine too. Try not to use the stem. If it's the very top of the rosemary, you really don't have a stem, it's just where all the pine needles sort of come together, or the rosemary needles, I should say. And that'll be it. Now, I've also got some oregano leaves here that are dried, because I don't have any fresh, and I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle some of those in. But again, I just put a little bit in here for now because I like to put my herbs in towards the end of the cooking time, because then they don't just boil all the flavor out. You get some nice fresh herb flavors. We're also going to put in here some ground pepper, and I'll put more than that in, and some barley. Now, how much barley am I going to put in here? Well, I would say I'm probably going to put about maybe a half a cup of barley in here. Maybe that's about half a cup. There we go. Again, I rarely, if ever, measure. And then I've got rice. We've got the basmati rice. And I'm just going to dump that whole bag of rice into our soup. Some of that got stuck there at the bottom. Make sure to get all the rice out. There we go. And now we'll stir again. And I'll reposition. That was good. Let's try that over. I'll reposition the camera so that you can see exactly what our soup looks like while it's cooking down here. Now the soup's going to cook for quite some time, and if you stir and splash on yourself like I did, that's no big deal. You're probably going to get pretty messy when you cook, so when you're cooking with tomato products, don't wear your best clothes. I'm wearing a sweater here that I probably shouldn't be wearing today because now we've got tomato juice on the sweater. Okay, let's take a closer look. Here's our pot of soup. We're going to stir that. You can see all the wonderful vegetables that are in there. It looks more like stew. Well, these vegetables will cook down and actually become smaller. They'll actually, the liquid that's in the vegetables will come out and the vegetable will actually get a little smaller in size. You can see there's just so much in this soup. Now the rice, or not the rice is cooked. It's just really a pre-cooked rice. But the barley, that will cook and that will become like little pearls of barley. Now the rice that was in that bag I didn't break up very well, so I'll break that up as the soup cooks, as I stir it. But there you go. We're going to come back and visit the soup again after it's cooked for probably about 45 minutes. I started out on high. However, I'm going to reduce the heat down to about 3 at this point, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to place the lid onto our soup. Our soup has been boiling on the stove for about 1.5 hours to 2 hours. I just got done adding the rest of the fresh herbs. You see some rosemary on top there, and I'm just about ready to stir again. Throughout the cooking time, I've been stirring the soup, probably about every 15 to 20 minutes. Look at that. Doesn't that look delicious? Just filled with about every vegetable you can think of. And again, if it were summertime, all of these vegetables would be fresh vegetables, no canned vegetables. However, being winter here in Ohio, I had to use some frozen and canned vegetables, which is fine. I hope everybody tries out the soup, and I think I've made enough here for almost every viewer out there. That's it for today's show. Have a great evening. And we'll see you next time right here on Quick and Healthy with Mr. G.